During the 19th century, women barely played a role. They were controlled by all the men in their family, from their dad to their uncle, their husband, and even their brother. Their main purpose in life was to find a husband, reproduce, and raise their kids. Once they were married, they would have to give up everything to their spouse. They were most useful in the house, taking care of the kids and doing housework. In other terms, you could say that they lived in a patriarchal society. The 20th century was filled with good and bad moments for women. I will go more in depth with some of the decades in a minute. For now, let's talk about the whole century. Mainly, women were treated like they weren't important at all. They had the same job, with some exceptions, depending on what class they were in. Women barely had a say in their country, and they were walked all over by the men. Now let's go into depth about each decade. The 1920s is a time when women legally had a little more freedom, but physically didn't. During this time, the 19th Amendment was passed that allowed women to vote. Not everyone liked the thought of women voting. Certain groups of men, like the Ku Klux Klan, or better known as the KKK, did not like how women were starting to get more freedom. Eventually, women decided that it was time for them to do something different and or protest. These women were called flappers. Flappers were young women who wore short skirts, cut their hair, and listened to jazz music. The 1930s was a time of depression. When the Great Depression hit, it affected everyone: higher class, lower class, men, and women. Once it ended, women took the opportunity to get jobs. They were paid in low wages for long and harsh hours. Men were paid twice as much. Women had to rely mostly on their husband to bring in the money to feed their children. And for the women who chose to be single, they would have jobs just like the women who were married, but all they had to do was take care of themselves, which caused them to have a lot more money than the other women. During the 1940s, World War II was going on, and with a lot of the men gone, women had to take over. Even the women who weren't comfortable leaving their house and doing other duties had to. There were many empty factories that needed people to go fill in the open job positions. The women had no option, especially if their loved ones were in the war. They felt like they had to supply them or else they knew something bad could happen. You could call this nationalism and also total war. Total war is when everyone in the country gets involved with the war. After World War II ended, the men that made it home took back their jobs, and the women had to go back to their one main job, which was being a housekeeper. Men and women soon came to the agreement where there doesn't have to be gender roles anymore, but even with this agreement, women weren't paid as much as men until the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which equaled the pay for everyone. As of today, women have gone a long way from the 20th century. They now have the exact same rights as men, the exact same minimum wage, and the exact same jobs as men. Women are now allowed to vote and participate in their government. The factories now are not as harsh as they used to be and do not use kids and women to do all the hard labor. Women are still known to do housely duties but also have a good paying job as their top priority. Even though there still might be a separation of higher class and lower class, the lower class would still get paid the same if they worked the same job as the higher class. Women can also dress however they please now, without standing out because of how short their skirt is, or how short their haircut is, or what kind of music they listen to. Thank you for listening.